Hello and welcome back to our series on beginning Google Apps Script for HR, brought to you by Prairie HR Solutions. My name is Jake Finger, Principal Consultant here at Prairie HR Solutions. And in this video, I would like to talk all about arrays. When we deal with spreadsheets, let's go back over here to our spreadsheet here. When we deal with spreadsheets, I know we don't think of it this way, but really we are working with arrays. So we deal with rows and columns, and this can be thought of as an array. This can be thought of as an array, and this whole thing can be thought of as an array. In our previous videos, we pulled data. We pulled it from initially one cell, and then I took all the snippets and things that we wrote in here and placed it in our reference file. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, please go back and watch those previous videos. But we pulled a set of value, a one value, and we got that one value and we did some things with it. We set it to individual cells. We changed our variable. And then we pulled values and learned that values gives us a two-dimensional array. And a two-dimensional array comes to us in the form of rows and columns. So this is a row containing 1, 2 columns. This is the next row, 1, 2 columns, and so forth. And then we learned to set the values using a two-dimensional array. And we also learned how to flatten a two-dimensional array, essentially take a two-dimensional array and turn it into a one-dimensional array, which is like this. And we also learned how to take a one-dimensional array and turn it into a two-dimensional array. And we also learned briefly what a pinned row is. It takes a one-dimensional array and it pushes it to the very last row. It creates a new row with that data. So in this video, what I would like to do is talk all about arrays, because arrays are going to come up quite a bit, both one-dimensional array, two-dimensional arrays, and quite honestly, even three-dimensional arrays. So arrays can be thought of as, I'm going to use the analogy sandwich. It may not be the perfect analogy, but it's going to be an analogy nonetheless. And say we have our new array here variable, and it's a sandwich, and these here are all of our toppings. So in order to get to the toppings, you got to get through the bread. So when we're assessing information or trying to pull out information from an array, we have to think of it in that level. So if we want to isolate facilities, we have to actually go in through past the first level, our bread here, and go 0, 1. And then once we get to that level of our sandwich, we then have to drill into that array and go 0, 1. So let's really dive in to an array. So we know that an array is a series of elements or values, and it's encapsulated by our square brackets, and it's used to contain information. Now, we can get an array by either, just straight typing it out like this. Like we can just say, let single array equal, and then we can just create an array this way, like 5, 6, 9, dog, whatever. So this is a one-dimensional array. It's a single-dimensional array. We have our sandwich and all of our parts here. Then we can have a bidimensional array or a two-dimensional array. And a two-dimensional array is a series of these embedded in an array itself. And that's what that is right there. And we can pull it by obviously coming up here and grabbing it from a spreadsheet, which handles rows and columns into an array. Or what we can do is actually create it by using what's called an array constructor. So let's do create an array using array constructor. Okay, so what an array constructor can do is let's declare a variable and let's declare this variable. Let's just say fruits. You'll notice that a lot of times when we're learning code or variables, you'll use fruits, cars, animals, numbers, or whatever, but let's just call fruits. Now, what we can do is say we have a list of fruits. So let's go banana, let's go oranges, apples, of course, got to have apples in there. Apples, and then maybe one more. Let's do kiwi. Okay, so this is a list. It's not an array. It's just a list of information. It's, you have one string, another string, another string, another string. Now, to get this to an array, what we could do is use a constructor. And how we would do that would be new array, and you'll see that this array is a constructor. So it's going to take a list like we have here and turn it into an array. Now let's go ahead and log that out. Fruits, and see what that new array constructor does. You'll see that it took all those values and made it into an array. And this is helpful if you're pulling data from a lot of different sources and you want to take all that data and turn it into an array so you can populate it somewhere else. So that's another way that we can create an array. And this definitely doesn't have to be, this doesn't actually have to be like this. I mean, we don't have to have it like that. This could be a variable with all these strings embedded in it. That would be fine. So there's two ways we can do it. And we already talked about assessing an array. So what this produces, let me go ahead and grab this and comment it out so you can see. So that produces that. And what we can do is we can manipulate this array. And how we can manipulate an array is let's create another variable here. And let's call this our fruit array. Now our fruit array is going to equal this stuff right here. Let's just grab this. We'll close out that line. Now what we can do is actually we can manipulate this array to a degree. Say we want to add grapes. So we can come down here and simply put fruit array, and say we want to change, we made a mistake and we don't have oranges, we have grapes. So we need to go over to the 0, 1 index and change that. Now, just like we did with our variables, we can also do the same thing to our array. So what we did is we went into our fruit array and we're selecting that element at the index number 1, 0, 1. And what we want to do is just change that to grapes. Now, if we log this out, fruit array, and run this, banana is not defined. Okay, so let's go back here and see what in the world we have here. Oh, got it. These are strings, so they must be in quotation marks. Okay, now we'll run this. Okay, and as you can see, this is our initial array. And we built this with a constructor. And then what we did is we went to the 0, 1, this oranges right here, and we changed it to grapes. And when we change this, it updates that array. So oranges goes away. It's not storing it anywhere else unless we're going to refer to fruits up here. Once we tell it to change it, it changes it. It's done. So when we reference that again, it's with that update. Now this also goes into the order of operations. So or the flow of this function. So let's log it out ahead of time. And what will happen is we will see this, and then it'll run this code and change it to grapes, and then it'll populate it again. So let's run that. And then you'll see it ran that first one, changed it, and then logged it out again. Now, if we were to just come over here and then say, wow, we really messed up and we don't even have apples, we can then take that new updated array and select apples 0, 1, 2, and then change that to I'm going to start running out of fruit here. Strawberries. And then let's log it out again. And then we'll run it. You'll see we started with this one. And then we changed that that element at index number 1 to grapes. And then we took that variable again, which now has this data in it, and changed apples to strawberries. So that's a way that we can directly change information or elements within arrays. Now, what we can also do is add something here to the end of it. Like say, well, we have something, we want to keep this, but now we have oranges. So let's add in something at the end of oranges. And how we do that is by using a method called push. So what we can do is, let's come down here, create a new comment, add element to end of array with push. Okay, so what we can do is we can take that fruit array. Now that fruit array is going through a lot of transformation. So since it's down here, we are doing it after we changed apples to strawberries. And you'll see what I mean here in a second. So what we can do is just hit dot push, and we enter inside here, our parentheses, what it is that we want to push. So let's now say that we have oranges. Had oranges in the cupboard, forgot about them, still good. Log. Now when we do fruit array and run it, you'll see that oranges has now been added on to where we left off the fruit array. So let's run it. You'll see that this is the array we started with. And then we took oranges, replaced it with grapes. And then we took apples in the next one, replaced it with strawberries. And then we realized is that we had oranges. We didn't want to change anything. We just wanted to add a new element. And there it is right there. Now, the other thing that we can do is say we wanted to not add it at the end, but add it up here in front. For whatever reason, maybe you're really trying to ensure that these are in alphabetical order or whatever, and you don't want to use sort. So to put something at the front, let's add ourselves a comment here. So our comment's going to be add element to front of array with unshift. Now you have two methods here. One is shift and one is unshift. Unshift adds an element to the front while shift does something completely different. And we'll get into what that does. So let's take our fruit array here and we'll do unshift. And inside our parentheses, we'll say, what is it that we want to insert in the beginning of our array? And let's do mango. Now let's log this out. Fruit array. And we'll run this. And now you'll see we're carrying this on. We're doing a lot of manipulation to our array. And the very last one, we wanted to keep all of this, which is now the new value of that fruit array, and we wanted to just add something in the beginning. And there it is, mango. So now let's see how we can remove an element from an end. So let's remove element from end of an array with pop. So what pop does here is pop will go through our array, grab that last element, and pull it out. If we wanted to return that element, we definitely could. But in our case, we're just wanting it to get rid of it. So we can take our fruit array, which now has all the above changes to it, and push pop. And now what we do is when we log fruit array, and we run this, we can follow along with what's happening. This is our starting point. So let's run it. So here's our starting point. We changed index number 1 to grapes. Then we changed index number 2 to strawberries. Then we added grapes at the end with push. And then we added mango up front with unshift. So this is the one that we're working with. And then we used pop, the pop method, to get rid of oranges. So now let's go back and get rid of mango, because we made a mistake and realized that we don't have mangoes. We never got them in the store. So we got to remove that from our list, from our array here. So let's create a comment. Remove from front of an array with shift. So let's now do fruit array dot shift. Now we're not adding anything in because these two methods right here, we're not adding, we're taking away. So when we're using these two, we are just pulling away from the array. We're not adding anything to it. And then let's log out our fruit array now and see what we got. So you can see this is the one we started with. We then replaced that updated value. And then on that updated value, we added something at the end, added something at the beginning, removed something at the end, and now remove something at the beginning. And as you can see, once we manipulate an array and update it, and that value has a new stored values, we can continue building onto it. But once it's changed and that code is running, it remains changed. So keep that in mind if you're working with arrays and you're manipulating arrays, because you don't want to pull something out uh, and then lose it and not be able to retrieve it. And that's, this works good for one-dimensional arrays because that's what we're working on. This is all one-dimensional array. Let's comment this out. Come up here. We'll comment it out here. Oops, that was horrible. Comment it out there. There we go. So we did this all with one-dimensional arrays. That single-dimensional array. These and these. So now let's come up here to our second dimensional array, our 2D. Create ourselves some space here. And let's just try to do the same thing. Let's push something to the end there. And what we're going to push is, let's push a new name. And that new name is Arjun. Now let's log this out and see what is actually happening. Because when we think about pushing, we're pushing to a one-dimensional array. And it is going to do exactly that. And then we'll do the same thing that we were doing before. First, we will log the two-dimensional array in all its glory, and then we will push this name Arjun, and then we'll log out what happens. Now remember, we had it indicated that it is a one-dimensional array, so when you think of the sandwich or an array of arrays, this is an array, this is an array, that's an array, and what we did was we took Arjun here and just added it to the end of that level. So that doesn't really help us, because what we were wanting to do is, if we're adding a new employee, we're going to need this to be in an array itself to include into that array of arrays. So what we could do is, instead of just using Arjun as a single item, we can say that Arjun is in fact an array. Now when we run this, you'll notice that Arjun is the beginning of a new array. Now let's go ahead and add in the rest of Arjun's information, and we can do this a few different ways. We can continue to push information the way we have been, or what we could do is continue on in this array. So we know that Arjun is going to populate in that 0 index, which is actually our column A, when you're thinking of it from a spreadsheet. Or we can do is simply just place the information in here. So the next one would be the index number 1, and let's say put Arjun in finance. And you notice I'm separating them by commas, just as the others are. And then this piece, to make sure it's aligned, is the salary. And let's just say everybody in finance is paid exactly the same. There's some compression going on, I'm sure. And now let's run this and log it and see if we've created a new row of information. As you can see, we have, and it is exactly the same way. So we can push, essentially, in this case, a new employee and their information to that array, and then populate that array like we did in last videos using append row or set values if you want to do the whole thing, or whatnot. So what we can also do is continue on and do, say, we can unshift if we wanted to keep it in alphabetical order, if we were drilling really down into that. Or we can use pop the same exact way, shift the same exact way, and so on. So this is a way that we can handle arrays and manipulate arrays. In the next video, I would like us to explore something called a map method. And what a map method does is it allows us to go through an array, and we can do it through our new array here, and select an index or a column. In our case, we can do division, and we can create a new array with just that column. And that's going to come in incredibly handy when we get into things such as index of and filtering. So on index of, we can actually come down and say we want the index of Beth. So when we do an index of Beth, it'll show us that index. So this will be 0, 1, 2. And we can then use that index to pull the entire row of data. So next time we'll work on map method. And we hope you're enjoying our series here. If you are, please hit subscribe. And until next time, please take care.